welcome to Comics on Friday the 13th. I'm Jason Voorhees.
I am Mike Myers.
I'm the Frankenstein monster.
I really hoped you were gonna go with I'm Dana Carvey and ruin the Mike Myers bit.
Yeah, that always confused me. Well, it's not like it was a huge deal, but to be honest, that sometimes confused me as a kid because I don't know, I don't watch any kind of entertainment. Well, that's not really true.
It's not true.
I don't like horror, and didn't watch SNL movies and shit like that. But welcome to our show where we talk about comic books.
By the way, eventually we got to choose an actual name for this show as it's getting an audio version.
We don't have to.
I mean, we do because it needs branded.
It can be insert show name here.
That's not going to work on the search.
That's not going to be really searchable online.
That's not searchable.
That's the point. We're an exclusive audience. Our retro book this week.
Opening up the Hall segment, which will be exclusive now to YouTube because I'm editing it out of the audio broadcast.
I kind of forgot about it. So Hall segment. Am I the only one? I think.
Yes.
All right, I get to shine the light on me. Cut you guys out of frame. So I picked up. Well, delivered to me was the Golden Age Submariner. The War Years omnibus by Bill Everett. And so I can't find a knife, so it's going to stay in the shrink wrap for the moment. I saw someone do a video of the direct market version, and I believe both of you probably watched that video in part, correct?
Yes.
No.
All right, well, Dan knows what I'm talking about. In his video, do you recall, did the spine look like this?
I can't remember. But
white spine.
Yeah, it's a weird spine.
I believe the direct, so very odd, almost always direct market variant versus regular variant. Usually the spine is exactly the same, and the back, it's literally just this, which is different usually. But this, because of this, this color scheme, I think the spines on all these are different. Which is odd. And it'll be interesting to line them up because obviously they're going to be different colors in this top section, though the black will match except for the text and icon. But that's very interesting. And I kind of sort of wish that I had known that before I decided to, commit to all one design, but it's whatever. I'm very excited about this book. This is actually, obviously, I'm not remotely taking any credit or anything or thinking this is clever, but a year and a half ago or something, I mapped out the contents for this hypothetical book because I was getting really interested in the Golden Age. And obviously DC has been going hard on books like this for Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Arrow, and other characters in other ages, where rather than splitting up collections of here are all the Batman stories from Batman, here are all the Batman stories from Detective, here are all the ones from World's Finest, etc., they compile them all together and obviously not have the other features from World's Finest. Whereas the Golden Age Marvel Masterworks were always per title. So this includes issues from Marvel Mystery Comics, The Human Torch, Submariner Comics, All Winter Comics, and Dairy Mystery Comics. And so the Golden Age Marvel Masterworks would be just Marvel Mystery Comics. And that would include the Submariner stories, the Human Torch stories, the Angel stories, just Submariner Comics, which would include Submariner and whatever else, just the Human Torch, which include Human Torch, the rare Submariner backup, stuff like that. But this is very interesting. It's not a huge book, and this specific thing, Submariner by Bill Everett, will have a second volume essentially for post-war, and there will be a huge gap, but it's not Bill Everett. So who really cares unless you're a super Golden Age nerd, in which case buy the archives. I mean the Masterworks. But I don't know. I'm like super excited about this book. I'm talking too long about it. But the other thing is now I have to somehow sell like 2 or 3 existing out-of-date Golden Age Marvel omnibuses. But I'll figure that out. I clicked the wrong button. So that's the haul. Yeah.
So they're making a Human Torch and a Cap one, right? Like they're gonna all match that.
Well, so there's pre-war Submariner, post-war Submariner, Human Torch, which I think might be labeled pre-war, but I don't know that there's that much content for post-war. Maybe they'll do that. And the other one is not Captain America. It's Simon and Kirby. So it's Captain America. Well, I mean, it's like the stuff people care about in the book is Captain America, but they worked on a few other Golden Age Marvel characters. I don't know if you're familiar, besides maybe seeing an image sometimes on wikis, but they created the Golden Age Vision.
Didn't they also do Angel?
No, they did not do Angel. Angel is Paul Gustafsson, and so that's the other one. Is once they get through. The other thing is, where do I have that book? Did I put it on my shelf? In the 50s, Captain America came back. So technically, they could do Captain America stuff post Simon and Kirby, but it's not remotely interesting. I mean, well, you know, Golden Age people will like it, but there's nothing like very, very exciting about the creative team or anything like that. Whereas in the 50s, when they had the brief superhero revival, the Captain America of that period is interesting for a few reasons, because it was drawn by John Romita Sr. and written by Stan Lee, and it was like the commie bashing Cap. And they actually collected that entire run in this very strange book. Let me get in frame. Decades, Marvel in the 50s, Captain America Strikes. And you can see this book very thin. And so this book, oddly, if you're like kind of historical minded or just Cap fan, is the only one of these bizarre Decades books which is worth possibly tracking down, especially since, because all the Decades books besides this one are so strange, it might end up in bargain bins pretty quickly. So be on the lookout for that. But I don't know, they could do a post-war Human Torch and they could do Angel, but Paul Gustafsson doesn't have quite the brand value of Jack Kirby, Joe Simon, Bill Everett, and Carl Burgos. And then beyond that, there's nothing they can do. And they've already done the Monster and Mystery Suspense, whatever they're calling the Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko 50s centric books. So Golden Age Marvel Comics going to be pretty comprehensively collected. And that's nearly 10 minutes of that. So our retro book this week is Hellblazer number 40 by Jamie Delano. I think that's I don't know how would you pronounce his last name? This is the eternal comic book question where you never hear these people talk about themselves or audio interviews up until I mean, that's how I always said it, but I've
always heard it as Jamie Delano.
But it could be, how do you pronounce FDR's middle name?
Talk about Hellblazer 40.
Which is spelled the same way, I believe.
Talk about Hellblazer 40.
Hellblazer 40 is the last issue of Jamie Delano's run. So I thought maybe this would be an interesting thing. It would be like a kind of send-off summation issue. But really, and next issue, in fact, is Garth Ennis, because he's the second writer on the book. And in fact, I kind of forgot, having not read a shitload of Hellblazer, Garth Ennis's first arc is Dangerous Habits, which is his most
I
famous.
didn't know that was his first arc.
Yeah, starts in 41. But basically, this issue, there's 2 layers to talk about / criticize. So Jamie Delano goes like his script here is like super poetic 90s Vertigo garbage speak, where it's just like everyone is speaking in riddles and poetry and none of it makes any sense. It's just not my style. There's tarot card symbology, which shows up like multiple times in the book. I don't know the first fucking thing about tarot. And then the other layer is Dave McKean, who, is perfect for some things, not perfect for other things. I would say, if I was a Hellblazer reader, if I was reading this in, I always forget to keep the note for when these come out. But if I was reading this in the 90s as a Vertigo emo kid, I would have probably been like, oh my God, this is fucking awesome. But it's just kind of not really my style. And even like the fucking credits page is like the scratchy aesthetic and you can't read half of it.
Oh, bad.
So what I believe happens in this book, which first of all, there is one line where a character says, somebody tell me what's happening. And I'm like, yeah, I agree with that.
I had to go on to DC's wiki to figure out what happened in this after I read it.
Yeah, honestly, you might know more than me. John dies and then he's not dead. And I don't know. Actually, I have no idea what happens to this.
Something about John becoming the Magus or something, but he's dying, but his soul is transferred to somewhere else, but he's fine. And it's all about him seeing a future with his daughter or whatnot. That's kind of the gist of the issue. But because we didn't read 40 issues of Hellblazer, and Dave McKean's art has always been difficult, to say the least, to understand how the story progresses, it's really hard to understand what's going on.
The only thing that I took away from this is the Magus thing, and that reminded me of the Adam Warlock storyline with the Magus, like from Infinity War and stuff. But that's it.
Also, again, it's probably because I couldn't understand a single thing, but this felt pretty long to me.
Yeah, it felt super long.
Yeah.
Even though, and I did double check the page count because it was the end of a run. It's not longer than normal or anything. It just feels like that.
I mean, well, every box, it's like 6-panel grids and they're packed with text.
Yeah.
Not like Iron Man's email from last week.
Iron Man's email and his speech.
Yeah.
But it
were
was
literally half of the page.
It was a different kind of text. It was a different kind of dense, I think, because even like I thought some of the length and the density was McKean's art, but I would say safe to assume, all things considered, none of us were huge fans of this issue.
No, maybe if I read the rest of Delano's run, I'd appreciate it. But hey, that's our retro book for this week, right?
Yeah, that's the nature of rolling the dice. Yeah, I think it's actually somewhat comparable to last week with Iron Man, where we thought it would be an interesting issue, and then it was a totally doesn't remotely work out of context. These are parts of.
I don't know what you're talking about. That was a great issue.
Experiment. We've had more hits than misses, but I think we're hitting about 500 on these now.
Yeah, this is like a Dairy Queen grab bag. You just don't know what you're gonna get.
Does Dairy Queen?
They do, and it's gross. It's like Smash Buster bars, and it's just awful. It's not a good trip.
Very strange.
For more fast food takes with Dan, visit Dan's channel at Danny Mac.
Start reviewing Popeye's chicken sandwiches.
Well, maybe I will.
I'm going to obtain a Popeye's chicken sandwich.
I'll eat up that YouTube market.
So our next issue, going into this week's books, Amazing Spider-Man number 29. This is drawn by Francesco Manna, who I don't think we've seen on this book before.
I don't think so, but good artist.
Yeah, he's great, and I'm also not super familiar with his name in general, but good here. MJ is getting back into acting. That was teased or set up in the last issue or two.
I was in 25 and 26, I believe.
Okay, yeah. And Pete is being supportive. There's a funny fake out scene where they're reading a script together, and he's supportive. They're both supportive of each other. They're both still committed to their relationship, even though they're going to have to be apart for a bit because she has to go traveling to do this audition and this production and get her career off the ground again. And Pete has to stay in New York to keep his kind of re-entry into the academic world on track and not abandon Kurt Connors shortly after Hunted. And he's dwelling on this, as anyone in this kind of relationship would, where he's like, I don't want to repeat the cycle. I want to break the cycle. I don't want to lose MJ again. So he goes to consult Aunt May, gets a lecture about love, which I thought was really well handled. Great writing from Nick Spencer through the voice of Aunt May. It was very on character and very insightful. Even, remove Spider-Man from the equation. It was a great page. Yeah. And then Spider-Man's sister Teresa shows up. And I kind of forgot she was in this run because I think there might actually be a footnote at some point, but I don't think she's shown up in 10 to 12 issues.
I don't think she's shown up in Amazing. She showed up in Chip Zdarsky's Spectacular.
Yeah, but had she not been in this run at all? I feel like she was
I don't think she's been in this run at
all. So that's the other thing. Well, I'll get there. Pete makes a Stingray joke, which made me recall, didn't Namor kill him?
Yes.
Fuck. Carly Cooper helps MJ pack. Are they roommates or something? Or
no, they're dating. But they each have their own place, but they each frequent each other's apartment.
No. I'm talking about Carly Cooper. She shows up to help.
Carly's a friend who they met up and introduced MJ to like that therapy group for people that were involved with superheroes.
Okay, yeah. Francesco Manna seems like got his break into the industry and some of his first major gigs at Dynamite.
Wow. Well, there you go.
What's Dynamite?
And then, so Spider-Man and Teresa, they're helping. Spidey's helping his sister avenge this like agent dude who's been captured by the Chameleon and AIM. And then suddenly she has like falcon wings.
Yeah, she has like falcon wings, I guess. Whatever.
And I mean, I assume that was in Chip Zdarsky or something. I'm not sure when that popped up. And they do their thing. They don't nab the Chameleon, so that might get picked up later, or maybe this is a 100% one-off just to set up the true plot, which is that Pete doesn't get back in time to see MJ off. She has to get on the plane without him, and they have like a FaceTime call, which was pretty interesting to see. And they're both totally mature about it, understanding of each other. She's like, I know you're a superhero. And, she's not acting like how, the worst case scenario of writing a superhero significant other. And they end the call, and Pete has a ring in his hands. And it's not entirely clear to me if his plan was to propose right before she left, which would have seemed slightly irresponsible, like kind of jumping the gun and bad timing. But whatever, he possibly was going to propose to her, or he's planning towards that and was going to like kind of make some movement in that direction. Didn't want to end on this note.
I think his plan was to propose before she left, and then they were going to pick it up when she came back after 2 months.
So that's where the issue ends. She's gone for, I believe, like 3 months in story. And whenever she gets back, it depends on when she gets back. This could pick up around issue 36 because the next like 6 issues, it's basically 2 crossover events in a row. We have Absolute Carnage tie-in stuff, and then we have this 2099 arc.
Yeah.
And so 36, I believe, 36 might be in December. So the solicitation for that might be out like early next week or something, or the following week. So we might be certain what 36 is in a little bit. It could still be 2099 stuff or another arc, but the earliest this could pick up is 36, and it could be even later. And I said as a joke, and this kind of gets into a book that we're going to be talking about later, it would be really clever if Spencer builds this up so that it culminates in issue 50. Which would also be nice to know that Nick Spencer is going to do 50 issues.
I mean, I want him on the book. Listen, I want him on the book for a decade. I'm not going to get that, but that's what I want.
Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, this issue was great. Francesco Manna was good. I thought the facial expressions, the character acting was great from Aunt May. Even moments from Pete, Teresa, from MJ. All the art here was good. The scripting was great. It really balanced the dilemmas of Peter Parker. There was just a little bit of not really meta stuff, but it's callbacks without callbacks to that are pulling at the strings of Spider-Man fan base, of the marriage and things like that, and things that Aunt May and Pete are hitting on here, breaking the cycle and ideas like that. And I could not be more intrigued.
I mean, I wholeheartedly agree. This was my second favorite issue of the week. And that ending really just it tugs at you at the end. Where you're like, oh man, I hope Marvel doesn't just tease me with this, and I really want them to go through with it. But I thought I'd just like to say that the very beginning of the issue, after Spidey leaves the apartment and MJ goes, "You just jinxed us." I think from that point on, I thought that was a great touch. But the plotting and pacing of this was really good too. In my head, I could feel the countdown clock that Peter wasn't going to make it to that airport to see her go away. But the way they, like the way you said, them handling it in such a mature manner at the end of it is really, really just so satisfying to see. And then everything with the Aunt May stuff at the end too. They fully committed on letting Spencer let these characters mature and grow the way they should have been doing for a decade. But they've been stuck in that horrible vice that they were put under for 10 years under the previous regime. So it's really nice to see that someone is letting it, even if it's a visage of growth, it seems organic of growth happening here.
Yeah, it's very hard to say because the regime, the lower deck has changed, but the upper deck has just gotten more powerful. So very, very intrigued. I think every time Spencer pulls on these strings, the Spider-Man fan base is waiting to fade out.
It's been 10 years since they were married. That's an entire generation that's gone by now. And I think it's been long enough for us all to go, okay, that was a mistake. We should fix this. Obviously, after another decade, who knows what's going to happen with it. But I think it's the perfect time to kind of right that wrong. And I've been seeing some theories, and we were talking about this off air. Some people are thinking with Aunt May's current cancer diagnosis, with her possibly leading to death, obviously one of the deals that Spider-Man made with Mephisto was Aunt May's life for the marriage. And with her dying, is the some people are thinking, oh, I guess the deal's loosening because maybe Aunt May might not be around. Another one I've been kicking around is, well, since Mephisto's nowhere to be found and Johnny Blaze is now the king of hell, maybe he doesn't know how to control his powers, and with Mephisto leaving, maybe where we've kind of instilled a new status quo on where the deal stood. just some things to think about that I think are fun ideas and would totally work with this. But for the moment, the ride is really, really fun, and this book continues to be a pleasure to read.
Yeah, I would say actually looking at my list again, I would say this is my pick of the week, and I'd also like to just to twist the knife to correct that we're coming up on a dozen years.
Oh, really? It's been longer than a decade then.
Yeah. That's Amazing Spider-Man. Dan, do you have any other thoughts? We kind of sucked the air out.
No, you're good. Yeah, I mean, just going back to that era, like you said, where they're kind of touching on the marriage, the original marriage, but they're not, like you're saying, they're not doing a retread of that whole storyline. I think they're, Nick Spencer's kind of doing his own take on it and, kind of approaching it at a different angle than most of us are expecting. So, whatever does happen, I think we'll be satisfied with it. I mean, it may not be, what we expect, but I'm excited. I think he's a really good. I think he really captures the essence of these two characters pretty well, and yeah, it just reminded me of all the old Spider-Man books I've read back from like the 70s and 80s and stuff. So cool. All right, so jumping into Black Cat issue number 4. So this pretty much picks up with a whole new, I guess, story arc, if you will. We have Black Cat entering into the Fantastic Four headquarters with, meeting Johnny Storm at the front gate, I guess, and she's walking through. I guess there's a past history with the two characters. I'm not sure if they were like dating or whatever. It was just like a one-time thing or whatever. But she's kind of going in there trying to like sweet talk him into giving her a tour of the place. And the other two goons that she's with are kind of doing like some reconnaissance outside. And this other guy who is like tracking, I guess he was from like one of the first issues. He's trying to track Black Cat down, and he finds her in like a snapshot. So he goes to try to stop her from breaking into the Fantastic Four headquarters. And pretty much the end of the story, like the thing they're trying to get is there is this guild that was mentioned in the first issue that kind of collects all of the big scores from all over New York, like stuff that gets like cat burglared and stuff like that. And this guild is pretty much like the overseeing organization for all these different jobs. And the Black Fox is working with the Black Cat, and he's like, I'm trying to get into the vault that has all these prizes, these things that get stolen, and it's a really hard area to crack. So they're using like this interdimensional thing that the Fantastic Four has to kind of break in there and get the items out. And I think the actual items are stored in like an interdimensional gate, so that's why they need this technology from the Fantastic Four. So pretty much at the end, this guy who's doing the reconnaissance on Black Cat shows up at the same time the goons show up, so a fight ensues, and they actually end up screwing around with the gate, and the gate opens up and unleashes Blastar, which sounds familiar. I think he was like in an Iron Man comic at some point. Like he's a kind of like a one-off like monster kind of character.
Wait, Blastar?
Blastar, yeah.
He's a Fantastic Four villain.
Oh, he's a Fantastic Four villain. He sounds really familiar. I wonder if he's been in like an Avengers. I think he's been in like an Avengers book as well.
He's from the Negative Zone.
What'd you say?
He's from the Negative Zone.
Oh, okay. So that would explain that. But yeah, we get some cool commentary during this issue. Black Cat's kind of walking through like the different Fantastic Four characters. Like, you don't have to worry about the Thing or Reed Richards or even Johnny Storm here. She's like, the person that you have to worry about messing with in the Fantastic Four is Sue Storm, and I thought that was kind of funny. Because of all the people that she fears the most, she fears Sue Storm because talking about her mother instinct and looking out for her family and all that stuff. So but I really like this issue. There's a lot of intense moments. When the guy shows up first, the guy that's hunting Black Cat down, she's like, oh, they ordered food. So like the goons that she was with, like were supposed to be dressed up as like the pizza delivery guys and were supposed to like help her out with the job later on. But she's like, the pizza's too early. and like Giant Storm doesn't know what she's talking about. But yeah, I'm really liking this book. The art is growing on me. I think I wasn't a big fan of it at first, but I think it's getting there. And yeah, I mean, I know I'm the only one that read this book, but I think it's worth picking up and trade. It's kind of cool.
Cool.
Yep.
And I don't which book this week is the most discussed on the interwebs.
This probably.
It's really hard to say because Hawks Pox is still pretty dominant, and
I thought you were
Spider-Man.
talking about this versus Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah, well, those two, and then Hawks Pox is the ongoing thing as well.
Obviously, we're referring to Batman number 78 by Tom King and Clay Mann with Tony Daniel on the cover. This issue acts as basically a direct sequel to issue 50. Bruce and Selina are undercover in some tropical island. As Bruce is being drawn to look like Magnum PI, but even his matches Malone kind of disguise. But Selina's kind of trying to train him back up to mentally and physically prepare him for the onslaught that will be City of Bane.
Yeah, they're in their black latex and leather in the tropics, scaling a cliffside.
And it's awesome.
I'm just saying, they're hot and sweaty.
That is, but like, you know what? We don't get to see Batman during the day very much. And there's a really beautiful moment where they jump off the waterfall and Batman and Catwoman are just laughing together. So I think it's a really, really sweet issue of them coming to terms with where their relationship stands. And I think by the end of this, at least the way I read it, is they're together. Whether they're married or not, they're together. And the oncoming City of Bane is going to approach, and I guess that will test them eventually. But Batman's world is dust without Catwoman, as he says. And next issue is going to, I'm guessing, conclude the Magpie subplot that's happened in this. Clayman's art is fantastic. I don't think there's a better Batman artist right now. He draws Batman and Catwoman the way they're supposed to look in my head. Maybe Lee Weeks is my contender for best pound for pound Batman artist right now. But I love this. It was everything I wanted as a follow up to 50 and going forward. And I'm curious to see how Vince disagrees with me.
No, I don't disagree with you on this issue at all. I'm not liking City of Bane. I like Batman and I like Bruce and Selina just hanging out at the beach. I think it is there. You can definitely criticize this book on one level, especially as a traditionalist. That I mean, I guess there's action here. They like spar with a batarang. That's the closest thing you could put to action in this comic.
Does every book need action though? There's not really that much action in this week's Spider-Man, but we just said that was your pick of the week though.
Well, I would say that has way more action than this, but again, it depends on who you ask. I'm saying from like a traditionalist angle, Batman number 78, this issue would fall flat if you released it in, 1974, which doesn't necessarily mean anything, but
but I'm going to argue with you here. City of Bane had a fair amount of action.
Yeah. I think Clayman, out of costume captures both the characters really, really well.
Yeah.
Selina, I'll just say both of them look very attractive the way Clayman draws them.
On that beach.
Selina's looking great, and Bruce with the mustache, the open shirt, and the hat, he looks great. There's also there's some sports chatter in the beginning,
which that's a continuing thing through King's Run too.
Yeah, which I will take the Gotham Knights radio chatter 100 times over poetry. There's also discussion of rings in this issue, just like Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And the the pacing of there's constant like near kisses, teases over and over, and then it finally gets to the splash page, which I think that splash page is amazing. There's a few other pages and panels which are great. Some of it achievable really only through digital coloring technology and stuff like that. Like there's a few sequences where there's a bunch of rainbows on the pages, which it looks cool. I'm just noting it's interesting.
If that's the way to use digital coloring, I think that's the way that it should.
Yeah, it's done well. I'm. It's just another interesting thing where like you couldn't do that page in the same way 40 years ago. There's references to the second annual. I don't know that you touched on that much. Like
No, I didn't.
there's
No. Yeah, at the campfire, Catwoman is telling Bruce what she envisioned the future was going to be if they were married, and it's directly taking to Batman Annual 2 of their future with their daughter. Which I'm talking to our friend Brandon. I actually talked to him right before this. We're recording this. We were talking about 78. How it's kind of amazing to see all of these callbacks to King's Run. And to the people that are critical of this series, I don't know what and being impatient about it. The writers come out and said it's a 100-issue story. So there's going to be down, and if you're looking at it as a 100-issue story, I almost look at it the way he's writing this as a long movie. There's going to be dips in it, and there's going to be action, but there's going to be calming action. This whole issue, if you look at the hero's journey, is the hero basically prepping for battle of your one last happy moment, and he may not make it back, or whoever's with him might not make it back. That's the way I read this. But I also, like I said, with taking away from this, where they kiss at the end, I whether they're married or not, I firmly read it as they're together.
Yeah. I think it would be interesting if you did an abridged reading of Tom King and just read the issues relevant to Catwoman, because at this point, I think that's some of the frustration is, obviously people got very excited around like 24 or whatever, rooftops and the hanging out with Superman and Lois, and then the annual. Like those seem to be the hypest or the most like passionate moments that people have for this run. And you have periods where like, well, especially from 50 until now, you had a 25 issue, which isn't that long. It's only a year in real time because of ridiculous double shipping. But
Right.
You had a year-long gap between the beats of that aspect of the run, which is what has like drawn a lot of people. So that's interesting. And then obviously you have arcs within that gap, like Nightmares, which people were iffy on.
Along with Fall in the Fallen as well, but I liked those arcs.
I mean, I've checked in and out of King's Run. I still haven't read most of it, but I've read actually like almost all of that Catwoman stuff. And whenever I read those issues, I really, really dig them.
Right. Oh no, I'd say perfectly though. If you were to read this when it's all said and done, it's going to read really well, and you're going to be obviously rewarded for the callbacks you're going to get. And I'm looking, and next issue has Magpie, which I'm interested to see how Tom King handles Magpie. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the conclusion as we slowly build towards Batman Catwoman, which is the thing. Like, when we reach 85, we're not done. There's still 12 more issues of this to go.
I feel like in some ways this feels like a kind of like a little like mini promo for that upcoming series, because it's like there's a lot of stuff going on between these two characters, and like for me, like listening to what you guys said about all these different callbacks, like I'm not really even aware of a lot of that stuff, but like even I could sit and like kind of enjoy this issue just for the chemistry between these two characters. I think it's pretty cool. It's getting me pumped to kind of read more about them.
Yeah. Want to talk about Detective Comics?
Sure. So, Detective Comics number. I'll sit up here so I can talk properly. Detective Comics number 1011. So this is concluding a storyline that's been going on for a few issues now. Pretty much, where we're at here is Batman is stuck on this island, crashed with a plane full of executives, and we get a really cool, pretty much just a large fight scene against him and Deadshot. The art in this issue is great. For a while there, we thought, there's these two guys that are on the island, Clarence and Hiroshi, which we've talked about before.
Yeah,
And,
two World War II veterans that haven't really aged. They've stopped aging.
yep, and they kind of just were trying to kill each other for a while, and then realized that they just want to live together on this island. So Hiroshi gets kind of screwed up really bad, but he survives. We get some really cool panels and some great art going on here, like with Deadshot versus Batman. I kind of like the makeshift Batman suit. It's kind of cool.
I dig it a lot. I think it's with the old aerial bomber jacket and like the makeshift bat mask. It looks good.
Yeah. I was gonna say it's very. It doesn't feel like forced. It feels very like fluid and what you would expect, I guess, for something like this.
Okay, but before he puts on the rest of that makeshift costume, he bathes in mud.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. Yeah, he does indeed bathe with mud, so that way I guess the people that are on the plane don't recognize, I guess, his face. I don't know, like his mouth and stuff. I don't know if that makes any sense. But yeah, so pretty much, Batman ends up winning the day, ends up beating the shit out of Deadshot, saving everybody through a transponder that he had that Alfred kind of picked up on. Batman comes back later, drops off a bunch of food and a bunch of books, which I thought was kind of cool because when you think about it, none of these guys even knew that any of these books existed. You have, 1984, the history of the 20th century, Catch 22. I mean, there's just so many books that came out that they weren't even aware of.
The conclusion of Peter Tomasi's own book he wrote, The Bridge, about the Golden Gate Bridge, that was also placed in there.
Yep. Oh, I see that. I didn't know that was a reference to a book he wrote. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's I believe it's a graphic novel he wrote about the history and building of the Golden Gate Bridge.
Cool. And then the last little thing here is we flash over to the Gotham Pine Barrens, where these, like, I guess, agents are being given assignments, and they're being tasked to hunt down Nora Freeze.
Yes.
Who is, I guess, Mr. Freeze's wife, right?
Right. Well, they're hunting down like specific parts that match Nora Freeze's body, like so he might be like trying to sew her back together or something. I don't really know what's going on in these You're the Villains epilogues for this series.
Yeah.
At least this one finally advanced. The past few issues we've had like 1 or 2 pages of Mr. Freeze literally just doing nothing at all.
That's true.
Yeah. But overall, I really, really dug this issue. I'm really enjoying Peter Tomasi's writing. I think, this is definitely, I mean, next to the flagship Batman series that's going on right now, I mean, this is probably the second best book that has Batman in it that's coming out.
I will go out on a limb and say that Peter J. Tomasi is writing the best evergreen Batman that I've seen in a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff is just so approachable. Like, anyone can kind of pick this up and
it's timeless.
Yeah.
This fits, and it fits very well in the line of era of Batman that I like, which is like late 80s, early 90s. This feels exactly like something that would be in there.
Yep.
I really just have one additional comment, and actually connecting back to Batman, I think another thing we didn't bring up is in Batman, the very first page is a direct lift from Batman #1.
Yes. Yeah.
When Batman apprehends Catwoman in her first appearance. And then in this issue, Batman has a moment where he makes a criminals are a superstitious and cowardly lot joke. And that's from Versus the Chemical Syndicate, Batman's first appearance.
I would, as a small like tag on for Batman 78, did you also notice that when they were talking about that moment on the boat, they weren't arguing about if they met on the boat or the street? That was the first time in this run where they didn't argue about where they met.
Yeah,
So,
though I think though they bring
take
up
that whatever that means, but I just thought that was interesting.
though I think she brings up the argument when she's talking about Helena and essentially the annual.
Yeah.
But yeah, Detective is great.
Yeah.
It's cool that you get two different flavors of Batman in the flagships right now. Very different flavors.
Well, I mean, Batman's the most popular character at DC, and he's going to be in the most amount of books. So I think it's safe to say there's a Batman for everyone, and somewhere in this publishing line. But Riddler Year the Villain, another one of these Year the Villain one shots, but another one written by Mark Russell, which is why I read this one. Scott Godlowski is on art here, and another very cartoony kind of style. This is kind of in line with what we've seen from Wonder Twins, but this is all about the Riddler and King Tut hanging out, and Lex Luthor visits the Riddler, but he doesn't get any gifts from him. It's all about how the Riddler hasn't changed or evolved. He's still the kid that won a riddle contest and has been clamoring to that. So, and it's all juxtaposed with King Tut roping the Riddler in to pair up for this trap to get Batman. But at the end, the Riddler just walks away and screws over King Tut. Really, really solid issue again. Mark Russell's just one of those writers right now that writes a really damn good comic book. And he does character work really, really well with placing character situations. But his humor is also really funny. King Tut is hilarious in this. I really recommend this. I think the Sinestro one shot was slightly better, but this is still right in the good old wheelhouse that I want from Mark Russell.
King Tut is from the TV show.
Yes.
It did not originate in the comics, and I think wasn't incorporated into the comics until the 2000s. There was a Batman Confidential arc by Nunzio De Filippis and Christina Ware.
If you remember that arc also had the Riddler.
Yeah, and I don't know that he's really shown up since then. So, next major King Tut appearance for all his fans.
Yeah, I think you guys would really enjoy this if you read it. Go back and read it.
Yeah.
Really, it's me just once again praising Mark Russell, but some really, really fun character work here of the Riddler walking away and knowing that he has to evolve and change. Will that actually be a sticking point from this? Probably not, but a good one shot nonetheless. Black Hammer Justice League number 3. Michael Walsh is just a damn good artist. I'd love to see more work from him. This is the first time I've seen stuff from Michael Walsh, but it's beautiful. And it not only does it work great with the Black Hammer universe and fit there, but it also fits the DC characters really well too. Cyborg comes to help Batman, and we see them find I believe his name is Taki, or her name is Takiwaki, the robot of Colonel Weird, and Green Lantern and Colonel Weird are all in the Parazone. Is Green Lantern is learning about the history of the Black Hammer characters, while the Justice League is being interrogated. The Justice League is interrogating the Black Hammer characters, and eventually they get in prison because they don't believe them. But Golden Gale is able to escape, and she gets cornered by Zatanna, who's able to help her with her magic and help her say her magic word. So the way her magic in those universe works, where she has to say her words backwards, just like Zatanna does to cast spells. And the ending of this is that she's able to say Zafram, her magic word backwards, and she becomes regular old Gale. So this is the first time in this series that I've seen from reading Black Hammer that Gale has been able to come back to her regular self instead of being trapped in her kid's superpowered form. Meanwhile, like I said, Colonel Weird and Green Lantern, John Stewart, are in the Parazone, but they've uncovered. They come to the moment that the Flash is the one that tries to break the barrier on the farm in the Black Hammer universe and dies, but they interfere and they go outside of wherever Colonel Weird has been in the Parazone before, so they're trapped on that end. Still really fun, zany, out there sci-fi fun here from Black Hammer Justice League. Jeff Lemire knows obviously his Black Hammer characters very well. He knows the Justice League very well. This is kind of a marriage made in heaven here with the way he's handling this book. Plus, we get to see some fan favorites like Zatanna show up. I didn't even think to expect to see her in this, but really, really fun stuff. This is going to look great on the shelf to the rest of the Black Hammer library when it's all said and done.
Over in Coffin Bound #2, this series continues to not make a ton of sense. We start with some guys in masks approaching a fat dude who has fallen asleep in his hotel room while watching porn, and they just brutally cut him up to harvest a piece of his body, maybe multiple pieces, that represent perfection in some manner. So like maybe he has a really great looking ear, and in fact he does not, because he has a freckle on his ear, so they don't take his ear. But maybe he has like a string of capillaries which are perfect that they can harvest. And so they grab something or something else from him, it doesn't matter, and they just leave this guy like just in a pool of blood with all his organs ripped out on his hotel bed. Because it turns out that these weirdos are like Frankenstein, like body modder perfectionists. They like steal people's, like if someone has a great eyebrow, they steal it and then affix it to their own bodies. And our main character is chilling with this character that she met up with at the end of last issue. And this character's name is Cassandra, but uses male pronoun, or people use male pronouns around them. There's also a sex scene. This character doesn't have any breasts or anything, so I assume it's a dude named Cassandra. And he's also blinded somehow. And they have this dumb philosophical question about how a nest is part of a bird, because a bird can't function without the nest, and like they're predetermined to know how to make a nest. It's all kind of dumb. Turns out Mr. Starlight, the guy who accidentally or regrettably put a hit on the main character in the first place, was not killed when he got swallowed by their earth. His lackey digs him out with a shovel, but then Mr. Starlight chops his lackey's head off with the shovel for no reason. As I said, there's a sex scene. The main character, there's a panel with full frontal nudity. And then she checks in with a character that's in the previous issue seemed to be kind of like her oracle kind of figure. This guy that she was calling on the phone. She calls in to check on this guy, which is just an excuse to dive into this character suddenly became really weird. This character, I guess, is some like major germaphobe, and germs are, you know, on your body and on your skin and everything. So to prevent germs and sickness, they want to reduce their body's surface area, and to do so they have used a chainsaw to cut off their arms and legs. And so then, because they have no arms and everything, they drop the phone, and I assume we're never going to see this character again. It's very strange. And it's a very, very, very strange panel to see this character with no arms and legs and a bloody chainsaw on the ground. It's not like so gory to the extent that you're going to vomit, but very strange to see. And the main character gets jumped by some of these body modders that were set up in the beginning of the issue. Forces one of them to basically take her back to their base, where she runs into Earth Eater, who's killed all the other body modders. And that's that. And then that sequence ends with a splash page of Earth Eater confronting her. And that totally should have been the final page of the issue, but there's a 2-page epilogue, but it doesn't say epilogue or anything, of Starlight eating pancakes with a kid, and Cassandra is dead. And one of those splash pages is way more interesting and more of a hook than the other. and they chose the wrong one. But that's coffin bound. It doesn't make any sense. A lot of the scripting is still. Honestly, this is the closest thing we read to, as far as new books out this week, to Hellblazer number 40. And so it's got a certain very strange appeal on one level, but I don't really know what the hell's going on. But I'm very.
It's got to be the collective we, because you're the only one that read it.
Yeah, but I'm very entertained by the art, and there's just some crazy shit like, I don't know, seeing the dude cutting himself up with the chainsaw. It sticks with you. I'll give it that.
I mean, I wouldn't disagree with that statement. Collapse number 3. We have Mikey Way and Sean Simon still on this book. This whole issue is basically a dump for everything. Learns from Mr. Edgar, who is not reincarnated. It's just his black hole that's inside his chest is using the body and soul of Mr. Edgar as the vessel to communicate with Liam and teach and give him the lowdown. A black hole in his chest and was able to travel to different worlds. And on his world, he became a tyrant, and his mom stole that power and was able to kind of overthrow it. But in order to keep him safe, trap part of the black hole in Liam, and that's why he grew up an orphan, because he died. But his father is back, and he's kind of trying to come for him. Liam learns to control his powers of all these different monsters from the dimensions, able to close close them up with his black hole powers. But it's revealed he just kind of sends them to in the middle of Warnerville, Pennsylvania, or his father was able to use the black hole to come in from Warnerville, Pennsylvania. That's either one of the two make it seem that way. It's either he's not really getting all these people away and he's just sending them somewhere else, but because he saved the city, he's kind of become famous, and since he wants to be a famous DJ, he's taken under by this famous agent, and he's now playing these huge concerts, and he's forgetting who his real friends are, as he's now all combating with his newfound fame as one of the colonels that's kind of like a skull-faced Nazi dude, is breaking down one of his friend's doors, and we're left with them trying to kill her. Also, we got a person with a sniper rifle up while he's doing his DJ stuff, and then we got these squirrel monsters all coming into our dimension. So a lot happening here, but it was more of an exposition dump. I think this is where I'm going to drop off the book. Not because it's bad, but it's just going to read better when it's all said and done, because it's very much its own self-contained story. And it's just going to be read better all on a sexy hardcover. But still good work. I like the book, though it's approaching the point where I feel like it's a little bit predictable. But I'm curious to see how it will all end out when it's all said and done.
Cool.
All right, so jumping into Daredevil Volume 6, number 11. So we open up with a, kind of like a prelude to this whole issue, where a girl's about to get mugged in a apartment complex, and this Daredevil guy comes crashing through, and the police show up, and he's like, I need to get away. And just as we see that happen, we cut to Daredevil, Matt Murdock, who's on top of the roof from last issue, and he's being held captive by Elektra, and we get a nice dialogue between the two of them about Stick, referencing him there, and kind of how she's talking to him about how he's not Daredevil anymore and all that stuff, and he's like, yeah, I'm just trying to move on and do this whole parole officer type of thing that he's trying to become now. So then we pan to the Libris, I don't know how you pronounce it, family again, and they're still recovering from the shootout that occurred a few issues back, and they're pretty much being told that they can't keep the bookstore open because of Owlsy and the continued threat of having him around. So they're kind of just being told to lay low. I think her name is Minnie. Is that her name?
Mindy, yeah.
Mindy, the wife of the one of the librarists, I guess, sons. Um, she's kind of pissed off because she's like, I run that store. I want to be able to run it. And it's a little weird. One thing I do want to note about this is like Mindy from like the other issues looked a lot different. I think this is definitely a new artist, I think, taking over.
Well, this is the original artist. Marco Cicchetto is back.
Yeah, and I think for some reason, she looks a lot hotter for some reason. Like in one of these panels, like holding her kid, I'm just like, what the hell? Like this is a totally different, I guess, style of art there.
Well, I will say
Um,
though, it's nice to have Marco Cicchetto back, as the fill-in was not great.
yeah, I mean, this you can definitely see the difference in this issue. There's just some panels that you're like these actually look a lot nicer. So then we pan back to Detective Cole North, who is here with Detective Green. This whole thing going on with Detective North, kind of being framed by the police, I guess, commission, and kind of uncovering all that, what do you call, corruption in there.
Yeah,
He's trying to set up I guess, a meeting with Spider-Man, and Spider-Man kind of catches on to it and is like, "Oh, you're trying to get me to do this, set up a fake burglary," and he grabs him and swings him up and takes him up to a skyscraper. We then pan to Matt Murdock, just checking up on the people that he's helped with parole. So kind of just checking on that whole aspect of his life. This issue, I will say, we're doing a lot of panning, we're doing a lot of setup here, so there is a lot of different stories going on, but I think it's all boiling to something good. We then get to Wilson Fisk picking up Owlsy, throwing him out of a trunk in a car. Owlsy, he looks like shit, to be honest. Like he looks like
he looks like he's dying.
yeah, he looks like the Green Goblin from freaking Amazing Spider-Man 2. Like, what did he say it was? Like hyperplasia, whatever freaking made up disease they came up with in that movie. Anyway, he ends up breaking free, slashing a few of the Kingpin's goons, and Kingpin just lets him get away. We then get discussion with Spider-Man and North about, you know, law and order and how we go about, doing all that stuff. And at the very end, we get a phone call from Mindy basically telling Matt to come over and fuck her again. And I'm just like, wow, that's a little
Could be
forward.
more. You could be easier on that.
I mean, but that's pretty much what she's doing. She's like, please come over and sleep with me. And he's like, I probably shouldn't do that. And then all of a sudden he can hear a few uh, blocks down somebody being held captive, and that person is the Daredevil figure that we saw in the beginning of the issue, being held by the police, or so we think are the police. So this honestly makes me think a lot about Brubaker's run, the beginning of that run, where Danny Rand was Daredevil filling in for him while he was in prison. That kind of like makes you think of that, just because there's two Daredevils running around. But this issue feels like there's a lot of exposition, a lot of setup going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of play and setup in this issue, but I all think it's good. Yeah, it moves well.
It does. I mean, that's what I'm saying. We're jumping between scenes, but it doesn't feel like there's any momentum loss, and um, everything in this issue felt important to me. So I really like this. I really like Chip Zdarsky's run. I'm definitely probably gonna be collecting it at some point and reading it through after I get through Wade stuff. But yeah, this is really good.
Yeah, and I felt like this issue just slightly hijacked by Spider-Man, but Chip Zdarsky writes a really good Spider-Man, and that scene was really good.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I was a little nervous about that too. I'm like, oh, Spider-Man's gonna guest appear. I wonder if it's gonna be like batting you over the head with that. But no, they handled it pretty well.
Yeah, and I'd also say Marco Cicchetto's Spider-Man was very good too. We only saw him for a few panels in the first arc of the book. I'm happy to have Cicchetto back though, and I think he's on at least through the rest of this arc, which is nice. But yeah, I mean, Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil continues to be one of the best books I read at Marvel. easily in that top 3 range.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Right.
Movie, yeah. I'll read this run at some point. As expected. Event Leviathan number 4. I guess this is one of the few big DC events that's going on.
Is there
Superman.
more going on? I guess I know Doomsday Clock, but I don't even want to count it.
I mean, you're the villain.
Well, that's like a
that.
line. You're the Villain isn't so much an event as like it's a line-wide strategy right now.
So, Event Leviathan number 4. Last issue, Superman tried to save Amanda Waller, confronted Leviathan. Here we learned that didn't quite work out. There's some kind of like, I don't know, Leviathan has ambiguous, crazy technology where Superman isn't able to figure out who they are. They get away with Amanda Waller, and Superman's just flat on his ass. And so he meets up with everyone else and kicks everyone but Batman and Lois out of the room, which I guess slightly ties into like Batman Superman, where the idea where like everyone is a suspect, which actually that confuses me because like that whole idea was set up in the Price, the Batman Flash crossover during Heroes in Crisis, which then Batman Superman is written by Josh Williamson, right?
Correct.
So that actually flew into this, but it's weird because Batman and Superman are at the same time, publishing wise, are dealing with like who is a suspect, who are suspects together in 2 scenarios.
Right.
They're dealing with the infected Batman who laughs crap and then the Leviathan stuff at the exact same time, with a focus on their relationship and collaboration in it. Which seems a little strange and clunky.
Yeah, well, in defense of Event Leviathan, it looks like this whole event is playing out over the course of like a couple of days.
Yeah. And so we get some moments with all the other characters, all the other detectives separated. Manhunter is a special case where Leviathan kind of treated her differently. And then everyone has like, there's a funny moment where they have a dick measuring contest about their rogues galleries, which I thought was fun. Plastic Man is naming off all these characters. And then Silencer gets thrown in the mix, which is pretty interesting because, you know, she's one of the New Age of Heroes or whatever the hell they called it, the post-metal, like, artist-driven books. And I think hers was the longest lasting one. I think they're all officially dead now.
They are.
Well,
no, still around.
Yeah, Terrifics is. But I mean, that was always slightly different because they're not original characters. But Silencer was the longest lasting one of the most well received ones, and I think one of the ones that most easily sticks around as far as connections with our characters and premise. So it's interesting to see her here. Then Lois Lane runs off, steals a car, and the heroes all get in contact with Batgirl, who's undercover in Leviathan, and really doesn't advance anything. It's just a nonsense conversation like, oh no, I know this, but I'm not going to tell you right now, and you better be careful, and then it gets cut off or whatever. And Superman and Plastic Man fly off, I guess, to try and track down where Batgirl is and track down Leviathan. And Lois, turns out, at first it seems like, okay, maybe she's betrayed them, and maybe she is, but she runs into the other team of detectives, which is Zatanna, Constantine, Deathstroke, Montoya and Bullock, and Elongated Man. Which, interesting additions to this story. That was cool to see. Obviously, we have 2 questions now. We've already seen kind of the balancing act of the 2 questions in some of the other Bendis connected books. And interesting to see Elongated Man for sure, and also the emphasis on Bullock, because obviously Montoya is still a cape technically,
right,
through a question identity, but Bullock is just there. no powers or anything like that.
Or Deathstroke for some reason.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's Deathstroke.
I also don't like the fact that I hate Elongated Man's current costume. It's terrible.
It's a little iffy. It's hard to tell though because we literally only see him on one panel. I think it's actually slightly different from what has been like the very tail end of the New 52 stuff, where he like barely appeared for a tiny bit. So I'm interested definitely to see how Bendis handles some of these characters in the next issue, or wherever else he uses them. Honestly, this series, I don't know if it's just that other things are more interesting to me at the moment, but this series like totally lost steam for me. Though this issue,
I agree.
yeah,
I know
I didn't
dropped off it.
Yeah, I did enjoy this issue on certain levels. There, Maleev does some interesting stuff with the art. The first few pages, in fact, like the very first page of this issue, I believe, he really goes outside his boundaries with the art. And then there's a double page splash with Superman dealing with Leviathan, where there's it's a great art showcase.
Yeah, it's a cool double page splash. I really felt like they should have revealed who Leviathan is by the end of this issue. That way we could have had 2 issues of a chase of knowing who it is, and it could have ramped things up a little bit. It felt like not a lot happens here once again. This is 4 of 6 issues, and then introducing another team of detectives all here. It all feels like, all right, I guess it feels like we're leading towards a rushed ending because we're running out of time. But yeah, it's kind of lost steam for me here. I still enjoy it, but it definitely not from the beginning. Now I kind of just am reading it to see what the ending was all about. Dan, talk about Flash.
All right, so Flash, number 78. Sue. We get a nice kind of like panel here. So pretty much the whole theme of this issue is continuing the whole thing about Black Flash and death and constantly, I guess pun intended, Flash trying to outrun death. So we get flashbacks in the first few panels of, Barry dealing with, his mom's death and how, his job as an investigator, and finally showing a panel of him as Flash with Black Flash behind him. And then we're kind of brought back up to present day where Psyche is pretty much trying to destroy these guys because I think he realizes that the Black Flash is coming for them. So he's like, if I can stop you guys first, I can avoid getting killed by Black Flash. Is that kind of why that he's doing that? I think that's what it is.
Yeah, as far as what I can remember from the previous issue.
Yeah. So, I
He's
mean,
just selfish.
what'd you say?
He's just selfish, pretty much. He's a shitty character. He's an asshole.
Yeah. So there's a huge fight that goes on. Psyche ends up getting away, and they end up recuperating with all these other Speed Force users. We then pan to Malibu, California, where this guy, I don't know who he is off the top of my head, Mirror Master, I guess. He's being picked up here by Captain Cold and all these other villains that we were talking about in the last issue. And kind of just recruited him as well. That's like a whole subplot that I'm assuming will be the next story arc. I don't really know much about it, so I won't go into too much detail about it. But yeah, so we then pan back to the Flash Museum, where Flash is recuperating with all these other Speed Force users, kind of talking about Black Flash and checking up on where the kids are at. They're kind of taking care of like all these other rogues that are going, haywire across the country, I guess. And they pretty much come to the conclusion that they have to that Flash pretty much has to kill himself to kill Black Flash, because they have to destroy the Speed Force itself in order to save all these other Speed Force users from becoming destroyed as well. So obviously the other guys have an issue with that, because they're like, you're not killing yourself just to save us. And this other, I forget, who's this guy, that is it Captain or Commander Cold? Is that what it is?
Commander Cold is the good one from the future, and Captain Cold is the villain one.
That's right. Okay, so Commander Cold pretty much agrees with Flash, and he freezes the other Speed Force users, so that Flash can kind of go out and hunt down, and pretty much have like Black Flash like lure him into it, like I guess a trap of where he's going. And there's a point where he ends up getting chased by Black Flash, and Flash pretty much thinks like, this is the end for me, like, I'm running slower and slower and Black Flash is coming up behind me. But Black Flash keeps going and actually ends up killing Psyche on this train that's going, I don't know where it is, somewhere in Europe, I guess. And the last splash page I thought was really cool, just seeing like Black Flash holding up Psyche's helmet and just like a skeleton. Serves him right. Psyche's an asshole, like we said before. So I'm kind of happy with the end of this issue. I know it's not going to spell good for our heroes, but I thought this was a good issue. I thought it was understandable for me as someone who's still a noob when it comes to like the Flash lore. I think they did a good job explaining like what they're up against. And like I said, there's some just great moments here. So what did you guys think?
I didn't read this. You were the only one who read it.
Neither did I.
Really?
Okay. Yeah, I actually dropped this book partially just lots of books, but and I might jump back on this with the next issue, but just the forces stuff coming out of what Scott Snyder's been doing, it just really doesn't interest me. I was really jazzed with year one, and then the Turtle arc. Well, that was year one.
I was gonna say that was year one.
But then just like jumping back into those forces crap, it really doesn't interest me at all.
Yeah, I mean it's I think that there's a lot here that's like kind of like, I think I would like it more if it was just focused on Flash, but I mean I can see what they're trying to do here. So
Anywho, with that out of the way, Ghosted in LA from Boom. Vince, do you know about Boombox? Is that like an imprint within Boom?
I think it's their kids stuff.
Okay, or like maybe YA, because this book is definitely YA.
Okay.
But Ghosted in LA #3 by Cindy Grace and Soban Keenan. We open in a flashback to 1980 before the Empire struck back, which I thought was a pretty fun opening title. We center around Bernard and his then boyfriend at the time, Aaron, about how Aaron's trying to get him to go out, but he's stuck at his job. But it all comes down to him not wanting to be seen in public as a gay man back in that time in 1980 in California. Then we flash back to the end of the last issue where Ronnie, Daphne's ex-boyfriend, came to pick her up at the Ghost Mansion because of the date she was on, asking for him to intervene because the guy she was an asshole. They get into a little bit of a spat. Daphne cites mansplaining as Bernard and one of the other ghosts are watching this all unfold as they have their fight. But as Daphne's visited the next day by Bernard in ghost form, which apparently he's the only ghost so far that can travel outside the mansion. So we're slowly learning what all these different ghosts can do. But she said, hey, how about you contact Ronnie? Because I have a feeling he wanted to tell you something. Because Daphne saw him with another girl at the cafeteria and she thinks he's dating her. But she takes Bernard's advice and calls him back up. And Ronnie reveals to her that he is gay, and that was one of the reasons why he broke up with her. And they kind of make peace with each other. And then Ronnie ends up talking to Bernard the ghost, and a little fun moment there. This is a nice kind of sweet issue. Meanwhile, there's this old old man ghost who kind of hates Daphne and all the hijinks that she's bringing into the mansion, and he then like kind of transforms into a demon and goes after her. His name's Maurice, and he's kind of like an old crabby guy. And then highlighted in the LA sightseeing at the back of this issue, Cinegrace highlights museums that he likes in Los Angeles. Continues to be a fun little book I like to read. The art's really cartoony and fun. Yeah, like this book. Like this book. I don't know how long I'm going to stay on it, but I think for I'll at least stay on through the first arc.
Cool. Now we have a alphabetical-ish show today, and in the G category still, we have Absolute Carnage Symbiote.
In the G category with an asterisk.
Yeah. This is written by Ed Brisson and art by Juan Frigeri. So obviously Brisson is going to write the Ghost Rider ongoing coming soon. This is issue stars Ghost Rider. He wrote the Marvel Comics Presents story. So kind of just as much prelude lead-in to that series as it is a tie-in to Absolute Carnage. And I really hope this and Marvel Comics Presents are reprinted alongside that series, but
yeah,
probably not happening.
Well, what was it this week that we got the Ghost Rider trailer from Marvel?
Yeah. I'm very excited for that series.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to at least be fun.
Yeah. So this takes place before Absolute Carnage #1, which at this point we've read #2, so it's kind of interesting as far as the publication time. We open with Alejandra Jones in Nicaragua, confronted by Carnage, and she is a previous Ghost Rider. That was the 2011 series.
Did not go very long. I was very surprised to see her though.
Yeah, her series, I think it was like 10 issues or less.
I was gonna think it was set. Like, was it 7 issues?
Well, I'll come back to her series in a second, but I forget exactly how it ended, and she has a weird status quo in the beginning of this issue, and I don't know where that's from. I don't know if that's the end of her series, if that's something I missed in between or forget, but she's like Ghost Rider-esque, but not Ghost Rider. This is like, she doesn't have her cycle, or she doesn't seem to have her cycle. When she was Ghost Rider, I believe she did use a chain too. I'm not sure, but she had this weird like one arm like pauldron armor thing, which we see in this issue, but not in the beginning. She's like a depowered Ghost Rider. It's very strange. I don't know where that came from. And the status quo otherwise within the Ghost Rider universe is that Johnny is the king of hell, but he's stuck in hell. And Mike teased this earlier, where Mephisto, while he was, in charge of parts of hell, or parts of hell at least, could run around willy-nilly and screw around with the Silver Surfer and make deals with Spider-Man and stuff like that. Johnny can't really leave hell. He has to bring people to him, or he can do astral projections and stuff like that. So, we see him currently in Avengers dealing with stuff, and then here he uses projection to get Danny to basically be his lackey, pulled away from his bar. And the Ghost Rider rides down to Nicaragua, and the Ghost Rider's on the highway. And this is the point where it's like, okay, I don't know where what status quo stuff Jason Aaron changed and how anal you want to get. But the way, especially the Danny Ketch Ghost Rider is supposed to work, is that Danny only turns into the Ghost Rider when innocent blood is spilled. And that's the whole moral conundrum of the Ghost Rider, is that he can't really be a proactive superhero or a preventative superhero. He can't patrol the streets and like stop a mugging. And in fact, really, like if a mugging is happening, like right in front of him, in the traditional status quo, Danny Ketch can't turn into Ghost Rider until the mugger like nicks the victim with a cut or something. That's traditionally how it works, because Ghost Rider is more about vengeance than like preventative superheroics. But I guess I don't know when that changed, or if you could do a Marvel No Prize because the Ghost Rider's rolling down the highway to Nicaragua. But I guess I don't know, there's implication of blood spilled. He knows it long distance because of Alejandra needs help. And the reason Alejandra is even in this and they're forcing this tie-in is that apparently she was left with some part of Flash Thompson's symbiote because she hung out with him during the Circle of Four arc. And this brings me back to her series. The thing with the Circle of Four arc is it was another retread of the new Fantastic Four concept from Walt Simonson's FF run, where you had 4 super popular characters. You had Spider-Man, Wolverine, Ghost Rider, and Hulk, all like temporarily taking over the Fantastic Four roles. And Circle of Four was supposed to be a crossover between those 4 series, because obviously you had a Hulk book at that point, I believe, and you had some kind of Wolverine book and things like that. But the Ghost Rider book was such a flop that by the time they were ready to get to the Circle of Four crossover, the Ghost Rider book had already been canceled. And I think 1 or 2 of the other books, I don't remember exactly where Hulk and Wolverine were at the time. They were kind of iffy. And the Spider-Man insert for this iteration was Rick Remender's Flash Thompson Venom, and he was going to write most of the crossover anyways. So it ended up being point issues in Venom, which is always dumb and frustrating. But that was that, and there's also a crazy moment in that arc where there's it's like Thunderbolt Ross, Red Hulk, is on a Ghost Rider motorcycle, like with the Venom symbiote, and it's just it's a ridiculous, insane splash page. And I was thinking maybe that is, how Alejandra got part of the symbiote, but it doesn't really matter. But Alejandra's involvement initially doesn't seem to matter for shit, because Carnage just murders her and sucks the marrow out of her spine.
Yeah.
Which I thought was, obviously the rest of the issue goes in a certain direction, but relatively shocking moment, even though she is a very minor character that no one was expecting to be like a huge deal.
Well, you had to get her in the Ghost Rider graveyard somehow, and that was in the back of my mind as I was reading this. And
that fires up Carnage a bit. He's temporarily Ghost Rider-esque.
Yeah.
And again, this takes before Absolute Carnage. He doesn't look like that in Absolute Carnage. It doesn't matter. It's just, so that, whoa, here's another alternate symbiote thing. Danny uses the penance stare, or Ghost Rider uses the penance stare, and it doesn't work on Carnage, which makes sense.
Which is true, because he's used it on Venom and it didn't work on Venom.
And it's an interesting angle, even more so for Carnage. Carnage's explanation is pretty interesting. And there, again, the symbiotes, it's all like a major part of the symbiotes is just fan service bullshit. So we get a Carnage cycle in a few panels. And then Johnny sends Alejandra back by having her possess a villager. And they basically rally the village on their side. And so they run off Carnage. And he goes to deal with whoever else. I don't know, maybe he goes and deals with, I forget her stupid code name, but Mania after this, or maybe that was before this. And Alejandra joins Ghost Rider Valhalla in Hell with all the others. And again, I can't wait for the Ghost Rider series. I thought this issue relatively enjoyable overall. I like how, and again, I don't know how much it was Brisson, how much it's editorial, but I like how they're actually building the Ghost Riders together and making a Ghost Rider continuity, even though I sort of don't like that. But if they're going to have all these Ghost Riders, I'm okay with them doing that. And the issue was that for a long time, a Ghost Rider series or attempt would fail. They'd go to the next one, and then go to the next one, and then go to the next one. Even though they do mention here how Johnny did mentor Alejandra, I'm mostly thinking of Robbie, where they picked up with Robbie, and literally until this year, Robbie hadn't met Johnny Blaze, and obviously Danny Carey's been off the board since the very end of Jason Aaron's run, and we haven't seen Alejandra in years. So I like if they're gonna have them all and have them all at the same time and to some extent, I'm okay with them connecting them. And I think ultimately when they connect them in this way, it makes the franchise stronger.
Are you sure Robbie didn't meet Johnny Blaze in the all new stuff?
I don't believe so because I think we saw them meet each other.
First meeting in Avengers.
Yeah, in Avengers. What you may be thinking of, which would not be canon, is Ghost Racers. Did you read Ghost Racers, the Secret Wars tie-in?
I didn't. But
Well,
I could have swore like he met something. I don't know if it was. It might have been like the actual like possession, like the actual Ghost Rider spirit itself. I'm not sure. I'll have to go
I
back.
mean, it could be Aaron. It could be Jason Aaron screwing up. Who knows? I mean, we do know that some of that series was retconned. Like, didn't his brother knew his identity at the end, pre-Secret Wars, right? And then they reversed that.
I think so.
One of the few Secret Wars changes. But that's that. It was a fun issue. Next, Hawkman number 16, Pat Olaf on art. We start with a flashback to 1948, and this is the first meeting between Hawkman and S.H.I.E.L.D. in London, and it's kind of a misunderstanding fight. But even though S.H.I.E.L.D. is like in this era is still totally a villain, but the setup is that Gentleman Ghost stole from the S.H.I.E.L.D. So the S.H.I.E.L.D. is mad and just through happenstance teams up with Hawkman, and he's like, yeah, it's a shitty thief to steal from a thief. And so they deal with that, and Hawkman senses some goodness in the S.H.I.E.L.D., and they're really tiptoeing around Starman. Where like there's a few moments where Hawkman's like, yeah, I kind of turned you and like helped with your face turn. And it's like there's this 80-issue series that you're not talking about much, but it doesn't step on anything from Starman. And then back to the present with the two characters in the Shadowlands going after Shadow Thief, the Lex Luthor upgraded version. And then it kind of veers off course for me. Hawkman fights this big shadow dragon, which is fun and it looks cool. Beats the shit out of it, but then S.H.I.E.L.D. keeps emphasizing, "Hey, you seem really, really aggressive and relishing the violence and everything." And then it's more teases, and it's like, God damn it! This book, which by all accounts, especially initially, was super well received by critics and fans, is about to get derailed by Batman, Superman, and Batman Who Laughs because Hawkman is one of the infected. And I think that's the implication here is that he's overly aggressive and violent as a lead into his Batman Who Laughs infection. And if that takes up, more than like one issue of the series, really going to be a bummer. Honestly, like even if you like Batman Who Laughs and if Batman Superman is a good title, which I think Mike read it, maybe Dan did.
I'm not sticking with it. I can't do it.
Yeah, but even if that's a good title, and even if you're the kind of person who likes Batman Who Laughs, all the infected characters, I can't see there's any way that they're not getting dragged down by this and that their series isn't going to become really fucking annoying for fans of those characters for like 1 to however many issues. And that's Hawkman, Supergirl. A lot of the others are more minor characters, but Hawkman and Supergirl are going to get hit hard, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, that was the series that had Shazam that got possessed at the end of the first issue,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Oh,
And the one exception, I bet Shazam's series gets to dodge tie-ins because number one is Jeff Johns doing whatever the hell he wants, and number two, it's late as hell. So there's no way that book's tying in.
wait, Jeff Johns gets to do whatever he wants?
Yeah. Or sometimes. It depends. That's Hawkman. The overall, pretty decent issue, though.
Vader's number 9. I find it funny that you put volume 3 onto this, but because it's unlike any of the other volumes. Though, Namor's grasp on reality is getting worse as he's planning an attack on a Roxxon oil base as Tommy Macon steals the Serpent Crown from him. And I guess he's corporeal and real. And and no longer corporeal, and he is real as he kind of manifests himself at the end. Though we get a flashback to Vince. Who's the member of the Invaders that has super speed and British?
Wizard?
No,
Spitfire.
woman. Spitfire. Yeah. To Spitfire, Cap, and Namor battling in Western Germany in 1942. So fun moments there is she almost gets hit by a tank that Namor is just carelessly hurling around. Also, we get Toro's new costume, which is like almost equally as bad as Jim Hammond's stupid Iron Man armor.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Cap, Jim Hammond, and Toro launch an offensive onto the Roxxon station with Spitfire, hoping to see if they can stop it in time. But as Namor's losing his grasp, he has Orca and Tiger Shark, and they just start biting and killing people, which wasn't their mission. So they just kind of retreat, and as Namor has another kind of close up on, Professor X did bad things to me. Oh no! Bucky comes back as Cap and T'Challa are talking what they need to do, and I guess they come to the conclusion that need to infiltrate Atlantis from the inside out. So they're going to infect themselves with the chemical that Namor used and become Atlantean in order to sneak into Atlantis and save the day. This was a down issue for me. I thought the art also took a hit. Like the Geist art is fine as it always is, but this is the first time that Carlos Magno I thought really was bad. And I know Vince, you've been more critical of Magno than I have. I've thought Magno's been good in the past, but this I just thought was rushed a little bit.
Yeah, I enjoyed the issue. It's gratifying here where you have the split with Macon and Namor's like different identity physically splitting off from him and becoming corporeal, because that means that Namor is no longer eternally fucked by this series.
Yeah, that's true.
Even though we have to circle around at some point and put the blame on Professor X, who's going on with his own thing in the Hoxpox thing, which is actually relevant here because I think we don't read every single Marvel book, but I believe this is the first House of X reference within another book. They specifically mentioned Krakoa. The inclusion of Spitfire was cool. So in the end, someone also tips off Roxxon. You
Right.
don't think that, and you just see a blonde woman from behind. That's not Spitfire, right? You don't think that?
I have no idea who it could be. I mean, it could be Spitfire, but I doubt it because that's her first inclusion in the series in this issue.
Yeah, if that was going to be the tease, or if that was going to be a development, I think it would have been more obvious already. Because it's not like that's a huge surprise, since no one even, most people reading this book don't even know who Spitfire is. So you would have just shown it. Yeah, I think I'm good. I'm glad that this, is moving towards seemingly eventually having a redemptive arc for Namor in this series.
Yeah.
I still don't like that the retcon of the multiple personalities goes back so far, and the costumes on Torch and Toro are just awful.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how fast we've gone to. Wow, Namor's costume sucks too. Oh no, don't do that to Human. Oh God, and then Toro's also like. So it's like most of the original Invaders costumes are terrible.
And like you said, I'm more iffy on Magno. I think some of it is just jarring. Like,
Yeah.
the first few pages are Magno, and I'm like, okay, this actually looks. It was like kind of above my base level for how I feel about him. And then you go into the guy segments, which honestly, at the same time, not the most impressive Butch Geist segments across the series so far. I think those are a little bit down.
But still good.
Yeah, still great, but compared to some of the earlier issues, looks a lot more standard. But then that next section of Magno, and it may just be the crazy contrast, it was like a whiplash. I'm like, ugh. It's a big adjustment,
How
but
are you? What were you like again?
ugh. But I continue to follow this series. It's a very engaging series, so interested to see where it goes.
All right, so Invisible Woman, again, another issue that only I read, so I will describe this to you guys. So, we get a kind of like a reference, I guess, to the previous issues. We get the CIA headquarters, and this guy finds out that Susan Richards has gone on the mission that this guy told her to not go on, and he wants to talk to Nick Fury because he's like, Nick Fury is definitely involved in whatever Sue Storm is up to. Um, I mean, the whole concept of this story, I think, is kind of interesting. We'll have to see what the next issue looks like, but pretty much, we then pan to Ireland, where Colleen Tintreach, I don't know how you pronounce that last name, um, is the wife of this guy that Sue Storm is tracking down. That I think his name is Aiden, and he worked with Sue on like different missions when she was a spy. But yes, tracking her down, trying to get some information from her when they're both attacked by these goons. We get some really cool moments where Sue kind of uses her force field to kind of repel all of the machine gun fire. Um, and they are eventually able to defeat the goons and get rid of them, um, which is pretty cool. Like she kind of uses like this like ray of like invisibility, like kind of like force field, but like using it as like a ray and like shooting it and like beating up these enemies. That's a kind of a cool use of that power that I don't think I've seen before. Um,
Yeah,
and
she's a character. Sue, Invisible Woman is a character kind of like Iceman, where it's like if you think really hard about the applications of her powers, she can do like near infinite things and is really, really powerful. And it took a long while for writers and editors and the fan base to be like, yeah, she's totally, potentially, by far the most powerful member of the Fantastic Four.
Yeah, and we kind of see a little bit more about it as we go along here, with the rest of this issue. So, find out this wife is actually a cover for him, just to make it. This guy is like a super secret spy, so he needed a wife to kind of keep people off his scent, which kind of arises some form of doubt inside of Sue's mind. She's like, I worked with this guy for all these years, and he kept the fact that his wife was not his wife from me all these years. She ponders that. We then pan to Rome, where um, Aiden's wife told Sue that Aiden would be at, and there's like this big conference going on in this art museum where this woman is like unveiling this technology called Li-Fi instead of Wi-Fi, which I guess uses like light as a way to send information back and forth instead of Wi-Fi, which uses like radio waves. The science of it is a little weird when you think about it, but pretty much Sue is trying to kidnap this woman to find out where Aiden is being, kept, and she thinks that this woman has something behind it. Um, the one thing I will say is kind of cool, like going back to Invisible Woman's powers. Um, you know, there's a whole discussion about the fact that her powers deviate from how the light touches her body, and how that's pretty much like how the science behind it. Like she can make her by look invisible by changing the way the light reflects off of it. So because of that, she's able to change the color of her hair, change her, skin complexion a little bit, even remove the ring. Well, obviously, she makes the ring on her finger disappear. If Reed Richards was reading this issue, he'd probably be super pissed. But she does that to kind of keep people off her scent. And, you know, again, we see her using that kind of like beam power to get away, create a diversion, and kidnap this woman. and this woman plays the victim for a little bit until this guy comes up behind them and tries to attack Sue, and she tells, she obviously is prepared for it, but this woman uses this li-fi like infrasound, I guess that's what it's called, and it pretty much just like screws with Sue Storm. There's like a really like graphic panel here where like Sue is just bleeding out the nose, and it's like faded like blood, like kind of like you would see on like a screen or something, like a TV screen. It's really weird. But we find out that Aiden is working with this woman, and they're like, "We need your help, Sue." So kind of expected. This whole story is, I guess, going somewhere. The players in it aren't really the most interesting. Kind of very basic, spy thriller type of concept here. But I don't know. I kind of like this art. I know we discussed this before. The art's a little weird. It's a different type of style, but like, especially in the moments where she's like dressed up as like, in the museum. There, I think there's some really cool shots with her, dressed up in like the different hair color and all that stuff, and I think it works. But I don't know. I'm still following the series. I'll see it out until the last issue, so I'll report back.
Let's pit women against each other. What what is better?
That isolated clip alone, bad.
Just out of a strange comparison and curiosity, what's better, Black Cat or Invisible Woman?
Like, what do you mean? Like, in terms of power? Like, who would win a fight?
No. What book do you like more? What book do you think is better?
I like Black Cat better.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
I think it has more like personality, I think.
All right. Next we have Moon Knight Annual. I didn't really know how to categorize it because it's one of those Acts of Evil annuals where not tied to any Moon Knight series or anything like that. There's nothing coming out of it.
Wrote a Moon Knight book.
Yeah. That is worth pointing out that Cullen Bunn wrote issues 13 to 17 of Moon Knight Volume 7 in 2015. So he's back on the character. Art here is by Ibrahim Mustafa and Matt Horick. This is part of the Acts of Evils nonsense where they pair up a character with some random villain, which not necessarily what you'd expect. So it turns out that Kang has beef with Khonshu in ancient Egypt. And there's like kind of like you assume that there's references to Rama-Tut, which is like one of Kang's identities, which is from ancient Egypt, but it's not shown or explicitly referenced at all, which seems like a missed opportunity. They don't go into the Kang alternate identities at all. But we flash forward to an alternate future controlled by Kang, where Moon Knight and a bunch of Khonshu priests are survivors and rebels. And there's like a Trump Tower panel joke, I guess. There's a building with big Kang letters on it. And the story here is Moon Knight is traveling through time alongside Kang. They're chasing each other. It's basically a video game type concept where we got to get the 3 items. Whoever gets the 3 items first wins, and battle back and forth over them as you go along. And each time in each timeline, Moon Knight runs into another Moon Knight figure. So there's the Wild West, there's World War II, ancient Rome, Revolutionary Era Boston, Prohibition Chicago, Victorian London, the Golden Age of piracy, post-apocalyptic New York City, and ancient Mesopotamia. And then eventually all the Moon Knights team up. There's like a joke, who needs the Avengers when you have a dozen Moon Knights? And poof, it's all fixed. The Moon Knight from Mesopotamia, which is maybe the first one, is like stuck in limbo, and Kang is basically off the scent of these items ever again. And the only person who knows that any of this bullshit went on is Mark Spector.
Yeah.
It was a relatively fun issue overall, not remotely essential. Like it didn't stand out. There was no like great idea or message in here. It was very popcorny, fun, but also at the same time, like I don't really like the concept of Moon Knight as this like eternal legacy character. Uh, Nick, who's been on a lot of our podcasts, I don't think he's never been on this show. He's been on some of our other shows.
Like not really a lot. Like scattered.
Been
Like
on a few. But he is like the biggest Moon Knight fan probably that I've ever met, including people on the internet. And I talked to him about this and some of the upcoming stuff with Moon Knight, some of the past stuff with Moon Knight. Obviously, the focus is on Moon Knight because there's a TV show. And also, I just realized that She-Hulk and Moon Knight both had, I think, the Acts of Evil annuals. I'm not sure how many there were. There was definitely a Venom one, and then there was a She-Hulk and a Moon Knight. And I believe all of those issues were announced before the Disney Plus announcements. So someone knew what was going on. And so, yeah, I think this is fun on its own. I don't like this legacy concept. I don't like when they lean too much into the mysticism of Moon Knight. I don't like when they lean too much into the multiple personalities, which they don't actually touch on at all here, really. I mean, effectively they do when you see 12 Moon Knights on a page. But as far as Mark Spector having multiple personalities and mental health issues, it isn't brought up at all besides his dialogue being a little quirky, which has nothing to do with it. But that was interesting.
I thought it was a missed opportunity of using Kang. It was just kind of a standard run through time story, which I felt that was kind of boring. But
yeah, I mean,
nothing great, nothing bad, just kind of average.
Yeah, like you said, Vince, the legacy stuff just feels like really forced. Like, you know, it kind of reminds me like of like Crimson Chin from like Fairly Odd Parents. Like it's just like, where the hell were these characters all this time? And then now all of a sudden it's like they just appear and it's like, what the heck? Yeah, I don't know. Like Mike said, Kang.
I get this reference. Vince doesn't.
He doesn't. Oh, he doesn't. Do you know? But you know what I'm saying, Mike? Like it's just like, oh, these other things exist. Like, okay, cool. But like,
Yeah.
there's no backstory to it. It's just like here it is. And I feel like Kang, you know,
The cool 1980s version of the Crimson Chin who got canceled for swearing.
yes, yes, we went into a whole discussion about this earlier this year. But yeah, I don't know. It was all right.
It's funny you mentioned that because wait, were you with us when we were talking about that?
Yeah, I was driving the car.
Yeah, we were talking about it in the car. All right, Silver Surfer Black.
All right, Silver Surfer Black #4 submitted this for my Cool Cover Friday, guys.
No one knows what that is.
Follow us on Twitter for our Cool Cover Friday winners. Anyway, yeah, I'm really digging this series. So just pretty much, you know, Silver Surfer here is like basically confronted with this birthing pod type of thing that Galactus has put at the center of Ego, I believe. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
And he's pretty much lifting this out of Ego's body, and Ego's like, "Oh, thanks, man. I owe you my life." And Ego's like, "Yo, bro, seriously, anything you need me to help you with, I will help you." And you know, because Silver Surfer's still thinking about Null. Null is still coming to kind of, you know, finish what he started with Silver Surfer with that black arm that he has. We get another flashback to Silver Surfer and his wife, Shala Bal. I don't know how you say it. So he's kind of thinking about her over and over again. And then we get an appearance from Uatu, the Watcher, which I think is really cool. You know, he's it's just hilarious at this point. Like the Watchers are just like, yeah, we're supposed to observe, but like I'm actually gonna like stop you from doing whatever you're doing. It's like, you know, like that's pretty much what the Watchers are at this point. They just are hypocrites. Anyway, so Uatu comes in and he basically stops Silver Surfer from what he's about to do, and he goes through a bunch of different like realities with him and shows him like, you know, one thing you do this, and another thing you die alone with on Zen La. So kind of just going through with Silver Surfer and kind of making him think about all the different things that could happen to him in alternate realities. And I mean, there's just so much like art in here that it's kind of like hard to think about the story sometimes because it's just you get so lost in the art. But at a certain point, we end up having Silver Surfer face off against like Galactus, who is this evil reborn version of himself. And I mean, just thinking back into some of these splash pages, they're just amazing. I mean, the art speaks for itself. I mean, I know we talk about this every single time we read one of these issues. But yeah, so there's a little bit of a fight scene, and then Galactus takes off his helmet, which I think this is probably the first time I've ever seen that happen before. I know it's probably been done before, but we kind of get some discussion between Silver Surfer and Galactus about stuff. I honestly like it's been about a few days since I've read this, so I actually kind of forget what happens, but yeah, I would say somewhat.
Yeah, they're just going back and forth on like the meaning of cosmic balance and judging and killing shit. It's all very Silver Surfer navel gazing philosophical stuff. The whole Galactus reveal, like it's back and forth because that was a huge deal. Like you never saw Galactus's true face, even though his helmet doesn't cover all his face. But they eventually blew that load, and then it's happened a few times since then. But then part of the Galactus concept is that he looks different to everyone, but they show him looking the same all the time because essentially that's how like we would see it as comic readers. But like Silver Surfer sees Galactus differently than Adam Warlock versus Star-Lord, etc., depending on like what species you are or your cultural background and stuff.
Well, that's a little weird. I didn't know that.
But yeah, I mean, this issue's still great. And then the other thing, so Uatu is fucking dead.
Not anymore.
Well, I don't understand this because in some panels, it looked like there was something weird in the art, like around his face. Like, I don't know if this is supposed to be like undead ghost Uatu or zombie Uatu or
Uatu
or an imposter or something like that. When I saw Uatu show up, I'm like, okay, this is gonna be annoying. It's gonna be Uatu. It's not gonna make any sense. I'm gonna hate it. And then, but then, like as I like got through, like as I actually caught up to the panel, I'm like, okay, it doesn't have to annoy me. It can literally just be any watcher, and it's 100% fine. But Silver Surfer literally says Uatu, and if you just delete that one word, this issue would work perfectly. But I don't understand this. I don't know. Maybe that's like maybe that happened in like a weird Al Ewing issue or something. But I don't know.
Would it really be the end of the world if Original Sin was retconned with this?
I mean, I'd be okay with that, but
okay, that I got what I wanted.
I'm trying to think of a story, like a storyline title that could be called like you can mix like Resurrection with Uatu and like what I'm saying, like kind of like X-Men, like Resurrect, like the X at the end.
No, just stop.
There's a U in Resurrection.
But yeah, I mean, pretty great. I don't think, and there were a few splash pages where Trymore really flexed, and I don't fully understand the Galactus sequence. Like Silver Surfer like travels back in time or like sideways in time to like Galactus's origin, at least the version of his origin on within this universe, within this multiverse, because it's like he's talking to a like pre Eater of Worlds Galactus. It's strange. But Donny Cates, his voice for the Silver Surfer, in my opinion, is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
The art in this series is 10 out of 10 in every issue. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's Silver Surfer Black is approaching that point where actually I think it's approached that point where yeah, it's great. You should be reading this. Where there's not really a lot of talk about it other than recapping the plot. So I have nothing more to add.
Yeah.
That works.
Wonder Twins number 7. It's back. I believe they had like what, a month and a half long hiatus. As all of the Wonder Comics line of books got extended an extra 6 issues. So Mark Russell and Byrne are back for more Wonder Twins hijinks. It's Stephen Byrne, by the way. And the Hall of Justice is being open for tours, but also Ice Cube.
John Byrne?
What?
John Byrne isn't drawing this?
No, Stephen Byrne is drawing this. Could you imagine if John Byrne was drawing this, though?
Oh my god, that'd be awesome.
It'd be amazing. The Ice Cubes have won the ice hockey championship, and they literally cut to the news anchor who's reporting on the news, then going, "I gotta say, today was a good day." Right after that, and I was like, "I know what you're doing there, Mark Russell. That's pretty good." But the Wonder Twins, it's all with the fallout of what's happened in the first 6 arcs with the Scrambler and Polymath getting imprisoned for their diabolical deeds from the first 6 issues in the first story arc. And since there's now no longer a lot of superheroing that needs to be done at the Hall of Justice, Superman kind of gives the Wonder Twins the new job of being tour guides at the Hall of Justice. And there's a hockey riot going on from the Ice Cubes winning their titles, so Superman has precisely the hero to take on this, and his name is Repulso. He's like this fat guy who is kept in quarantine, and he has like this suit, and even like he just smells really bad, and he disperses a crowd. And he has like these 2 handlers that come out, and like he's always like, "Hey, you guys want to hang out later?" And he just like lives sadly alone in this little quarantine bubble. And even the people that work with him don't want to hang out with him because he's so repulsively smelly. But also, the Hall of Justice gets a alert that there's going to be a meteor crashing into the Earth, and the Wonder Twins open up that special like room so everyone sees this. So we get another riot on our hands of people going crazy, and then like trying to ask the Justice League, why don't you alert us when things are going crazy? It's like, because if we did, riots like this would happen all the time. It's kind of a great moment from Superman with that. And they end up using Repulso for that again, but on the crane mechanism, they have him up, he snaps, and the Wonder Twins have to save him. And then Jaina ends up hanging out with Repulso in the form of an ant that can't smell, and they play checkers together. Kind of a sweet, wholesome issue ending here for as Wonder Twins continues to be really, really fun. One of my favorite books at DC right now.
Then we've got Powers of X number 4. Magneto and Charles visit Mr. Sinister at year 1, so this is before like the X-Men proper, who's surrounded by clones and stuff. And then there's like, who's the real Sinister? And regardless of which one, Mr. Sinister is written very campy in this issue.
Yeah.
That's been a point of discussion among X-Men fans, in the past few days. I'm kind of 50-50 on it. Honestly, despite the fact that Scott Summers is my favorite X-Men character, one of my favorite characters in comic books, I'm not actually a huge Sinister fan.
I like Sinister.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I like him, but I'm not like, he's not like a major thing on my list or whatever. But I'm kind of, I think Hickman goes just slightly too far.
Okay.
With some of the camp and flamboyance here.
I thought he was fine.
And that's basically the one subplot, and that's basically Charles is setting him up to catalog and index mutant genes.
Yeah, mutant DNA from later on that we'll see.
But then wipe his mind on why he's doing that. And again, so many retcon questions. Like, is this a retcon that sets up why he's been so obsessed with the Summers family? I don't think so. I think those can be entirely separate, and I'd rather they are separate. But that's an interesting thing to consider. And the index, the gene library, that leads to the way future stuff where Sinister is in charge of the crossbreeding and everything like that. And then basically there's two plots in here. There's that one, and then there is Charles and Cypher meeting Krakoa for the first time, or this version of Krakoa. And there's like this weird Krakoa origin stuff where it's almost like a Pangea type weird story where it's like Krakoa used to be half of a whole thing, and then it split, and one side was like a little edgy or something and caused some evil in the world. And so then Apocalypse like led some kind of thing and exiled or destroyed the other half, and now Krakoa is like essentially like broken and not whole. And so I don't know if then that like, in the next issues we're going to see that Cypher and Charles were able to reform them, and then maybe there's negative impacts that Krakoa is having on the population. I don't know. And then there is a third plot. There's some absolute bullshit for my taste in the future with the Phalanx, and I just don't give a fuck about that.
Well, I've never cared about the Phalanx, so that's another thing too.
Yeah, but the Phalanx they're not really ever cool. Phalanx Covenant is not great and stuff like that. But them like getting into the nitty gritty of how their hive mind works and 100,000 years in the future and stuff like that, like I don't remotely care. Again, we'll see. We have we're like, I think we're not even we're a third of the way through the series at this point, I think.
Right.
So, or we should be. I don't know. We should be 2/3. They're both 6 issues.
Yeah.
We should be 2/3 of the way through. So maybe all of the super future stuff is going to wrap around and it's going to make more sense. That's the nature of Hickman books. But as we go along, I don't care about the year 100 stuff, and I definitely don't care about the year 1000 stuff. And then the non-story pages here, it's a bunch of like Mr. Sinister's journal bullshit, and it's a bunch of like riddles and stuff.
Riddles that are not that hard to figure out.
Well,
riddle bullshit.
Well, some of them are super obvious, and some of them it's like I could take the time to figure it out, but also like it doesn't matter. But
and also, one for like a Newsarama or Bleeding Cool article that's going to decipher it in 20 minutes.
Yeah. The ones that I feel like noting is there's a hinting question about a 4th Summers brother. Please, Hickman, do not fucking touch this. That is, please don't.
There's first.
Or it's just Adam X the Extreme, like we all thought it was.
There's some hint about Cassandra Nova. There's some discussion of Inferno, and that Mr. Sinister has an X gene, which he has somehow from Thunderbird.
Yeah.
There's some strange stuff in there. None of it.
The big one is Wolverine having an affair with Maddie Pryor.
Well, I don't know what that's referring to, really. But yeah, there's a few of them are vague, a few of them are obvious. None of them really intrigued me, except for the ones that I'm like, don't go anywhere near that.
Right.
But that's Powers of X number 4. Do you guys have any additional thoughts?
I mean, I agree with you on this. I didn't really love this issue. I enjoyed the Sinister stuff. Some of the Sinister Secret stuff was fun, but like you, I was like, maybe don't touch that. And while reading this, when I saw the hint of a 4th Summers brother, I was like, Vince ain't gonna like that. So I kind of agree with you on this. Most of the stuff in the far future, I don't really care about.
And I'm trade waiting because I am not going to deal with reading this like this.
It's literally weekly.
Doesn't matter. Still get confused.
All right. Closing us out this week, Young Justice #8. This book had a bit I feel like it had like a really long delay, but that's due to the artist change. And we had John Timms on art, Brian Michael Bendis on script here, and the Young Justice team they're lost in the multiverse. It feels like forever ago that I read this book. That was like I had to like go back and like go through the other issues to remember what happened. But they're stranded on Earth 3 and they get into a fight with the evil versions of like the crime syndicate, but like they're all Young Justice members. Also, like, isn't Earth 2 the crime syndicate? So like Bendis just doesn't care, I guess.
Crime Syndicate is Earth 3.
Okay, it is.
It should be, yeah.
All right.
Earth.
What was Morrison's JLA Earth 2?
It's very complicated.
Right.
It's not. Don't think too hard because that's Earth 2 with a number versus Earth 2 out.
TWO, yeah. Big takeaway from this though is Tim Drake fights the Robin character of this universe, who is named Drake, and that's where he gets the idea for his new code name. He's going to go by Drake now because it's a fierce bird, but really it's a duck, which is I guess for why his new costume that we've seen leaked is brown and yellow, so it looks like a duck. That's terrible. Like that's terrible.
This was talked about a bunch as well.
They run into Batwoman. I'm sorry, the Batwoman, who is this universe's Steph, and like Tim's like almost has a moment with her, and then Bart just runs and just clocks her right in the back of the head and knocks her out. And there's something going on with Ginny Hex's crate in the back of her truck. But then we're left on a cliffhanger of her getting shot in the head, and the next issue is Teen Lantern's Secret Origin. So I don't even know if we're going to be still on the story in the next issue. This is like borderline dropping for me, just because it comes out so infrequently, and the pacing is all over the place. Like that Gem World arc took forever to get through, and then like having this long delay, doing a Trapped in the Multiverse story. Like I'm still waiting for Young Justice to go on and then have fun adventures in the main universe, and they really haven't done that at all yet. So like borderline dropping this. Didn't fully enjoy it. Like some of the bits are fun, but the like the grace period of seeing these characters back is now completely worn off, and I want to get to the meat of what's happening with these characters, not keep getting sidetracked on multiverse shenanigans and Gem World shenanigans.
Yeah, I go back and forth on whether I'm going to want to actually read this book in collected editions and stuff. The Drake thing, I don't. At first glance, it comes off really.
Red Robin. Just you've tried it 3 other times. It as bad as the name is, just have him be Red Robin.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. They already have a code name for him, and it's totally fine. And then they wanted to go back to Robin for the Young Justice like 90s revivalism.
Right.
But then okay, let him slip back into Red. I don't know.
Well, the other thing too is like why he's like they put him back in the 90s suit, right? So he's got the green. Tim's better suit, arguably, is that one from the mid 2000s that's red, yellow, and black. Just put him back in that, so it differentiates himself from Damian then, because Damian's got the green.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
Okay,
that's our show for this week. But a lot of books, most of them good. A lot of them, I think 3 pretty big books this week, in terms of releases that we really enjoyed, and there was a lot to talk about. But Vince, setting us up for next week, what is our retro book next week?
Our retro book next week I'm going to do this uncharacteristically.
What does that
And
mean characteristically?
It means he forgot to do the RNG before the air, so he's scrambling.
That's actually more characteristic than uncharacteristic.
so we are going to read Adventures of Superman. Put the camera on you. Oh god, I just kicked up a bunch of dust. Adventures of Superman number 506.
All right.
Should be fun. Thanks for watching this episode. Watch the last one, watch the next one, watch all of them, and have a good night.
Yep. And then look for the audio only coming hopefully Monday when I get this edited.
Brought to you by Mac Weldon.
Possibly. We're not there yet. We're not at that level yet.
Yeah.